when you design a building, though, or would you try to sway someone like an interior designer to your will? Like, is that part of the interest to it? Because, like, as a writer, when I'm writing a script, like, I don't want to let an actor know, oh, this is the way I want you to play this, because then they're not going to play it that way. But I have to, like, subtly try to guide them towards it without, bashing them over the head with it. So I'm curious to know if, as an architect, does your mind, or as, when you would be designing something, would you be interested in the interior design, or is it strictly the structural thing that appealed to you?
So me personally, it was more about what was happening outside the building that was interesting to me, which is where I went on to go for a urban and community design degree, because what that dealt with was how do a group of buildings influence the space outside of them. That to me was what I really found interesting when I went through architecture. And so in terms of what you just asked with, trying to sway someone to do something, I would say that's more of what I do currently as a urban planner.
Well, see, now, when you told me you were going into, like, urban planning and stuff, I thought, oh, okay, he's just going to tell them where the sidewalk goes, or, which bushes have to come down or whatever. Like, I wasn't entirely sure what...
That's a big part of it, too.
Well, but I wasn't entirely sure what, like, the artistic design part of it was, and I was curious if you could, like, enlighten us a little bit about that portion of urban design.
Sure. So, urban design and urban planning really, they deal a lot with the invisible zoning ordinances that guide everything that we see around us. And then on top of that, every city has master plans or ideas for certain districts, but sometimes their codes don't line up with what those are.
Explain a little bit more to what that means, the codes. What do you mean?
So every design, every project out there has to go through some type of zoning or regulatory review. And what that says is exactly what you were just talking about. You need to have a sidewalk, and your building has to be 15 feet from the street edge. You have to have a row of bushes. It can only be 45 feet tall, stuff like that.
Wow.
Like there's whole written codes, and once you start going down like that little pathway, it gets really squirrely and weird. Because once you start reading into that stuff, it'll like call your attention to another chapter, so like it rabbit hole is what we usually call it, going down the rabbit hole. But a lot of times the master plans show things that although they are beautiful, they would work well. It would make a place walkable. It would make a place very interesting regarding having outdoor patios, having buildings that front the street and activate a sidewalk. The zoning code will let someone come in and put a standard McDonald's with a full drive-through around it. So what we have to do as urban planners is try and talk people into going that extra mile, getting extra value out of their project by activating it along the street and things of that nature.
Interesting. That's actually interesting to me. Like, I'm very curious about stuff like that.
In a lot of ways, it sounds almost like Sim City in real life, where it's just like you having to plan out, blocks and blocks of city streets. That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. So, but imagine Sim City is, that's what everyone goes to for urban planning. But imagine you say that this area should be a commercial block.
Yeah.
Well, and then someone else who you don't even know gets to come in and actually show what it's going to look like. That's urban planning.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Now, is that frustrating, though, having to work within that box? Because that's got to be annoying as hell when there's, like, codes that don't make sense. Because Lord knows that there's been things that were passed that were outdated, or, the development in the region, or even just because of, like, weather or however humans interact with it or whatever, areas change. And I'm curious to know, like, from an artistic standpoint, how do you... Is there ways you can get around that, like, creatively, or do you just get smacked down with technicalities and get stuck under the thumb of like outdated laws or codes or whatever it may be?
There are certainly times when outdated codes and laws truncate you. But a lot of times, especially like where I'm at in Charleston, we have a commercial design review board. So they get to be a lot more flexible and loose with how things get built. So they can actually tell someone, okay, you want a McDonald's, that's fine. That's allowed by our zoning code. You can have McDonald's here. But we're going to make you pull it up to the sidewalk. We're going to make you have it be a story and a half tall, and it has to be an all brick exterior. So like design review boards, they start to have that flexibility that you're talking about. So what we would do as urban planners is kind of, when the applicant first comes to us, we kind of put them on notice with that. We're like, this is what usually gets reviewed and approved by the board. And then we'll also talk to, board members or other such people where, staff does get to have input, where we say like, okay, well, this project, if they do this, this, and this, staff would be happy. Okay. And then the board can say, we'd be happy with that too. You have to do that.
Okay. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, like there's sort of an aesthetic protocol that's determined beforehand. That's really okay, huh?
And that's designed, I assume, to create some kind of harmony within a quote unquote neighborhood.
Correct.
Okay.
That's interesting. So like what if somebody has a house and most of the houses are designed a certain way, and like say they've bought a plot that's like right next to it or something along that lines, but they don't want to do it the way the other houses are designed and this and that. They get shot down and they can't do it, or can they?
Well, that depends on where you're at. So the city of Charleston downtown has a Board of Architecture review that includes residential architecture. When you leave the downtown peninsula, there's no longer a Board of Architecture review.
So you can just go to town.
Residential. Yeah.
So to speak.
So to speak. I mean, as long as, again, you're within the zoning code boundary boxes. So the zoning code sets up a lot of different boundary boxes for people to work in.
Now, what about things like weather? Does that really, like, how does that affect your job? Like, because obviously, you guys aren't coastal, right?
Oh, yeah, we are.
You're considered coastal. Okay, so I assume things like hurricanes and snowstorms and the like affect some of the decision making that you have to have. What are some of the challenges that go into that, at least from an artistic standpoint? Like, what are you limited by?
So right now, artistically, what we'd be limited by to combat a few of the things that we're going through is our zoning code itself, having height caps to things, or having density caps for like new multifamily or other attached family home developments. Something that we're going through right now is Charleston is prone to flooding. And in the past, let's see if I can get this statistic right. I think in the past 4 years, we have seen a dramatic increase of what is called sunny day flooding. So that means there's no big rain event. It's just high tide has become higher.
Wow.
Oh.
And so what we're noticing is that trend. So we're trying to figure out how can we prep our area, very much like a lot of coastal Louisiana, prep our area for sea level rise, because it's only going up.
Right.
I wish it would at least plateau, but it's only going up. And we have to figure out how we can continue to grow, because we're a Sunbelt city. We are also having a population increase. So at some point, we're going to have population and water starting to pinch out where we can build.
Have there been any like creative developments, like in terms of how things are designed or planned or whatever, that combats that seawater rise? Like
Not
cool
yet,
gadgets or just cool designs or something? You know what I mean? Like something outside the box, like some like is there an Elon Musk to that kind of design?
Houseboats everywhere.
Exactly. Thank you, Rainwater. Houseboats everywhere. So what Charleston did actually last year, or maybe 2 years ago now, we contracted with a group out of the Netherlands for a series of reviews called Dutch Dialogues. And what that did is exactly what you're talking about. It looked at how do you adapt to this in a creative and design-friendly way, because you cannot engineer your way out of flooding.
Right.
At some point, you can put check valves in along the coast, which is stuff that doesn't let the water come back in the pipe, only out. You can put those in. You can put in pump stations to pump water from the land out into the river. You can put floodgates in. Everything mechanical at some point will fail.
Right. Yeah, as evidence with New Orleans, for sure, has had issues with that for years and years and years and years, and will continue
Correct.
to.
So that's really what the Dutch Dialogues looked at, was how can we grow and adapt Charleston in a creative way that's going to create a new community. So we're still moving through kind of the, forgive the pun, the ripples from what they did, and trying to incorporate some of that into it, but we're not there yet.
I'm
Yeah, no,
curious.
that's a.
Go ahead, Rainwater.
I was just gonna say that's a unique design challenge that I think the world over people are still trying to figure out how to deal with it, because it's coming, like you were saying earlier.
Well, I was going to ask you about this. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was a joke, but it looked real enough to me like it wasn't photoshopped. But months or maybe a year or two ago, I saw a picture on the internet, and that's, of course, the most trusted place to go for information.
The internet is the most trusted, yeah.
But they were literally, and I don't remember where it was, but they were building houses what looked like on stilts. Like, there was just a structure at the bottom that was just open-ended. It just looked like an empty frame to a house. And then, like, the house itself was like 3 or 4 stories up. And then the bottom was just, like a wooden structure supporting it and raised it above. Is that something?
Yeah, that's just like a thing
what
in
you
Louisiana.
described as FEMA floodplain compliant for the velocity zone along the coast. So you see that type of home from Virginia all the way through Texas.
So it is real.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is what my sheltered little Connecticut life doesn't know about. And so who came up with something like that? Was that like, who sits there and says...
That was in response to FEMA.
They just said,
FEMA
put a house on stilts and that's it?
Because FEMA said that the only way that you would get flood insurance would be as if you were above a certain elevation from sea level. So for that location, they could say that you have to be 14 feet above sea level. Your lot is only at 4 feet above sea level. So you had to make up 10-foot difference. And they would also say something like, the bottom of the structure needs to either have breakaway walls, or it has to be over 50% open for when a wave comes in during a storm event, it won't hit a wall and then blow it out and create debris that's going to damage other buildings around it.
Wow.
And that's why you see them just up on telephone poles, essentially.
That's crazy. I never in a million years thought that picture was real, but I guess the internet is dependable sometimes.
Sometimes.